So let's talk about the loot in Anthem's Cataclysm. This is by far the most talked about topic I see whenever I'm streaming anything from the test client or posting videos about it likewise, and after experiencing everything that the new content has to offer, I think I'm finally ready to do a preliminary review of the new loot improvements, because there's definitely been a number of them on the PTS. I've spent a decent amount of time over there, roughly 50 hours, which is about what you can expect from your average player nowadays. And before moving on to the various points I want to make, keep in mind that the PTS build isn't yet fully finalized and there might still be a few changes by the time it all goes live. Hopefully, if something does change, it's going to be for the better, and the recent war chest cost reduction makes me believe that is going to be very well the case at the very least. With that in mind, there are roughly two main points I want to touch in today's video. First, the war chest acquisition process with some numbers on the items that you get to drop, and second, the regular drop rate in light of the luck stat removal. So quite a lot to talk about. I'm starting with the war chest because these are what most players are going to be looking forward to once the Cataclysm event goes fully live. These are the only source in the Cataclysm update that do drop the new guns, abilities and melee weapons. There's no other way currently in the game to get them. Now in terms of legendary drop rates from these chests, I'm going to go over some numbers that I have personally experienced from opening about 100 of these in total, and I'm saying 100 because I only started tracking these way too late. I definitely opened way more than 100 of these, but there's more data coming from other PTS members that have done it way more extensively than I have, and I'll post some links down below you can go ahead and follow for a further read. As far as my own data goes, roughly 1 in 10 chests guaranteed me a legendary item from the new war chests. There have been a number of occasions when I only got a legendary after opening 20 chests, for example, while other times I've got them in less than a handful of tries. So again, there's a ton of RNG involved over here, but it does tend to average out over longer sessions. Also, after checking around, it seems that my luck was pretty much average or at most slightly below average, and I'm saying this because some other users have gotten drop rates of about 12.5% or higher for legendary gear coming from these war chests. But again, this all depends on the type of war chest that you open, and it seems that ability ones seem to have a higher rate compared to weapon and melee, which seems to have lower drop rates for legendaries. Again, this might be just RNG, maybe the sample size is too small, but I believe a 1 in 10 ratio is about what you can expect from these. Now 10% at first glance, this sounds better than the regular 1 or 2% we get for legendary drops on the live version of the game, and it definitely is. It definitely is. In 50 hours of playtime on the PTS, I was able to get more legendaries than I ever did in almost 300 hours on the regular version of the game, so that is quite a huge bump. In fact, the build I've got on several of my javelins are miles away better than anything I have over there on the actual live version of the game, simply because the loot acquisition on the PTS was much better because of the amount of chances I got to getting items. There is also an extra layer of RNG over here that you'll need to take note of, and that is the fact that items dropping from the war chests are not actually javelin specific, as in they can drop for any javelin no matter which one you currently have equipped. So this will further lower the chances of getting the exact item that you're looking for, as in roughly 2.5% per javelin. Maybe I am a bit overthinking this, or it might not be statistically sound the way I'm calculating this, but does it even matter if the end result is the same, as in you still having low chances of getting the exact item is that you're hunting for? So again, still a little bit of RNG involved over here even on the PTS, despite some of the changes that have been made. It doesn't sound as bad as you might think though. There's definitely an improvement over here, and there are a few reasons for that, including some mechanics BioWare implemented in order to combat this very problem of having too much RNG. Now first I'm going to get out of the way the fact that Anthem is kinda meant to be played with multiple javelins anyway, so even if you do get an item for a class that is not your main, this doesn't mean that the item goes completely to waste. You can still use it for the other javelin later on and build, well, additional builds, which are going to definitely benefit you. I would even argue that getting items for other classes made it easier for me to transition into using them more often, instead of having to start everything from scratch every time I started with a new javelin. Again, it's a matter of preference, but I personally prefer having this option option rather than not having it at all. Second of all, I've mentioned BioWare making some steps into compensating for the huge levels of RNG, and they did so at least partially with the introduction of the daily javelin challenges. Basically, every day there's going to be 4 javelin specific challenges that each reward you a chest for the ones rotated in the seasonal store for that day. It's kinda like getting an extra war chest without paying for it, but the difference here is that, unlike regular war chests that you get to buy, these daily rewards will give you a specific item for the specific javelin that does that challenge. For example, let's say you complete the Storm Javelin daily and today's seasonal store features the melee war chests. What this means is that you will get rewarded a melee weapon specific to your Storm for completing it, because as I was saying, this is specific to that challenge. Meanwhile, if you were to open a regular war chest, you would simply get a drop for any of the 4 javelins, so a lot more RNG involved compared to those tracks, and the same goes for the Ranger, Colossus and Interceptor likewise. Finally, the third and more indirect way is the actual cost of getting war chests in the first place. There have been a number of price changes in the past, with the latest one making them cheaper than ever before. I've covered this in the past, but if you didn't see it, the cost of one major crystal, which is what you use to get one war chest, has been reduced to half on a recent PTS update. It now costs roughly 500 minor crystals to get a major one, down from 1000 it used to cost. Going over some rough calculations over here, completing just 3 of the 7 arenas on Grandmaster 1 in the Cataclysm map will reward you about 500 crystals. That is the equivalent of less than 10 minutes of work for one single chest. And if you get super efficient on GM1 and complete everything, you get at least 2,000 to 3,000 points, which is about 5 to 6 war chests for about 20 minutes of work. So it definitely gets more productive the more efficient you are. And if you play on GM2 or 3, then you're looking at possibly doubling or even tripling all of these points. So there's definitely going to be a ton more war chests on top. All in all, the way it's set up is going to majorly favor efficient players and coordinated groups. The better you fare in the event map, the more you'll get rewarded, and this means the more chances you'll get at having or earning legendary gear. This means that the people who know what they're doing or who have played on the PTS will get to that level faster than your average player who didn't so far. But thankfully, even soloing GM1 or 2 doesn't require too much time and effort to perfect, so eventually you will get over there, and the more active you are, the more benefits you will get. Again, it's a way of rewarding players who are efficient, who are dedicated, and I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense for why BioWare is implementing the Cataclysm event map the way they are. The second point I wanted to go over is the drop rate, especially now that the luck stat has been removed, at least on the PTS, and I'll go over this quickly because you already know the story. Now, the current legendary drop rates from mobs on the live version of the game are pretty bad, to say the least. So bad that I even forgot how frustrating it can be, especially when you don't have the war chest anymore to compensate for that. The luck stat removal does seem to have an effect, but expect it to be marginal at best. Technically, the stat isn't even removed, it's still there, it was just taken down from the gear and it is now pretty much hidden. So now everybody is sitting at the max luck cap of plus 90, so you don't have to worry about it. But it's still over there, just sitting in the background and not doing anything. And what this means is that if you were already running with 90 luck on your gear on the live version of the game, you're likely not going to see that much of a difference in terms of drop rates. Or at most, there's going to be a light bump, since there's no spaghetti math pretty much messing things behind the scenes anymore. So again, this all comes in terms of how BioWare implemented the mathematics and the feature behind the scenes. And you know, I'm seeing some positive changes on the PTS. I'm definitely getting way more legendaries from just regular drops, but again, small sample size, so it might not be relevant. Luckily, we have some more data coming from the PTS forums that shows legendary drop rate to hover somewhere around 3% for Grandmaster 2 and 1% more for Grandmaster 3, so you can get up to like 4, maybe 5% on Grandmaster 3. So basically it's the old numbers, but with a default luck increase factored in. That is pretty much it, and maybe a half percentage over there just because the math is not wrong anymore. Now, the bulk of the difference here again is made out of the number of attempts you get and not the number of legendaries you get per chest. So the Cataclysm event map is packed with high tier enemies, events and chests, which provide a huge increase in the number of attempts that you get at the loot. I hope it makes sense, but for me this was a very positive change, as I was able to equip all of my javelins much faster than my entire time spent on the live game since its early access. You could say it's RNG on my part, it might very well be, but most other players would agree that there's a noticeable difference on the PTS in the Cataclysm update in terms of loot drops. And the best part about this is that I never touched anything more than Grandmaster 1, so all of the stuff that I have achieved on the PTS was done exclusively on Grandmaster 1, and if I were to make a comparison with the live version of the game, I would say that the amount of loot in terms of legendaries that I got from Grandmaster 1 Cataclysm map was on par with, or maybe even better than Grandmaster 2 on the live version of the game, so quite a bit of a difference over there. I'm not sure how that is going to hold up when we transition to the live event, but I hope it does stay the same. Finally, I'd also want to have a few words about the bonus stats that rolls onto gear. I've talked about this in a previous video I made, but I kinda wanna go over it a little bit more. I'm not sure anybody tested this yet, but I'm finding it more common for items of high quality to roll high stats. It might very well be that some of the stat ranges on gear has been adjusted in the Cataclysm update. Masterwork items regularly drop for me with plus 100 to plus 175 bonus stats on them, and I'm seeing the same kind of stuff for the legendaries as well, including weapons featuring at least one 200% bonus on them, and most of the times I have them featuring two, one 200% increase and another one with anywhere from 100 to 150, very close to the max cap. So the improvements are definitely there, it's undeniable, but does that mean that the loot system is fully fixed? Well, not really. Anthem still makes one of the most RNG filled games I've played so far. It could definitely benefit from a few more quality of life features to make loot acquisition a bit more precise, or at least give the players a few tools in their hands to remove some of the layers of RNG. For example, a recalibration bench was something that was mentioned many times in the past, or other ways that gives more control to how players handle their loot. There are many ways they can choose to proceed from here on, but with the new changes it definitely made a few steps in the right direction, at least that is my opinion at the moment. With that, I think we covered everything that needed to be covered. Tell me your opinion down below. In the meantime, make sure you give this video a rating and subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time.